if the Liberals don't want the RCMP to see the decision tree,
so sorry, Chair. I can't allow those kind of statements.
If the Liberals,
I raised a point
if I
that
have the
is of
floor,
procedure
I have the floor, and I have the floor.
Yes.
This is a clip taken from our previous live stream breakdown of the Ethics Committee on February 27th, 2024. You can find the links to the full live stream replay as well as the original committee video in the description.
Let's take a look.
I have questions for you that come from an access to information request. It's ATIP A-2021-02029. It deals with a decision tree from section 121(1)(c) of the Criminal Code, fraud on government. I provided both you, Commissioner, and the Staff Sergeant with this just before the meeting started, just as we moved through the document. So in this decision tree...
$10 says the Liberals are going to complain.
Oh, well, they always complain.
Point of order, Chair, we don't have this document. Shut up. Even though they probably should have been provided the document, but yeah, it's so annoying.
It asks a series of questions. The first question, was Mr. Trudeau a government official at the time that he took a vacation to Bell's Cay?
Oh, here it comes.
Go ahead on the point of order, Ms. Khalid.
I realized that
Oh, it's his girlfriend. It's your girlfriend. Oh my God, your horrible, horrible, terrible swamp thing of a girlfriend.
Mrs. have documents and Mr. Barrett has, but we would like to also follow along if that's okay, if Mr. Barrett can share them.
Okay, the challenge
on that point of order.
On the point, Mr. Barrett.
Yeah, I'd be happy to provide them to the clerk. They'll go into translation and then they'll be furnished to other members of the committee. It wasn't proactively disclosed by the government. It was made available by ATIP. I don't have any questions for other members of the committee, so they don't need a copy of it. If they would like to email me and ask for an English-only copy, I can furnish them with that, but I don't have it in French. I will provide it to the clerk. Translation services can deal with it, but I'd like to continue with my questions, Chair. It's not required for me to provide other members of the committee with documents that are provided to witnesses. It's not in the standing orders.
As we've learned from Mr. Brock. Just saying. Anyway.
So I'm going to ask that Mr. Barrett furnish that to the clerk so that we can have it translated and supplied. If he's only referencing it for the purposes of asking questions, I don't see, it's not a document that's submitted to the committee for that purpose. He's referring to...
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, if that's the case, if the witnesses have it and Mr. Barrett has it, we as members of the committee should be able to look at it too while these questions are going on. I'm not sure if my colleagues agree, but I'm a little bit lost without having this document in front of me, so I can follow along too.
So I'm going to allow this to occur. Mr. Barrett will be referring to the documents, I assume. You mean based on your first question.
I'd like to finish my first question, yes.
Right. You're going to complete your first question. But the point I'm making, Ms. Khalid, is that he can reference, just as any other member has paper in front of them that's not shared with other members of the committee. This is an access to information document that he has in his possession. He'll be reading from that document, I assume, and that will be translated at a time. So I don't really see the need for other members of the committee to have that. Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. The difference is that we don't share our questions or our comments with witnesses prior to us asking them. And in this instance, those documents have been shared with the witnesses. So I don't know if my colleagues want to jump in here.
I'm going to go to Mr. Barrett first and then Mr. Green on the point of order.
Wow, she's actually trying to imply that Mr. Barrett gave them a copy of this ATIP as well as his questions, so they know what he's going to ask. Barnaby, this lady is getting on everyone's collective nerve here.
And for those of you new in the chat, Barnaby has mentioned in the past that he finds Khalid attractive, so we take every opportunity that we can to tease him about it.
Because nobody else sees it, just saying. And yeah, and all she does is whine. Like, you know what? She acts as young as Trudeau's real daughter actually is.
Chair, it was provided to the witnesses at the start of the committee meeting. It's an RCMP document. They provided it in the ATIP. But if it makes other members of the committee uncomfortable that the RCMP
Chair,
are able to follow
discomfort.
along, then I would just kindly ask for the clerk to collect the document from the witnesses, and I'll continue with my questions.
Okay, so just received clarification. We cannot distribute those documents because, from what I understand, they are in one language. But if Mr. Barrett wants to distribute that to other members of the committee in that one language, then you can have that document in front of you if that's what the preference is on your side or any other side. So,
Okay, so being totally objective here, if this were to happen on the other side, the Conservatives would be complaining about the exact same thing. Just so everybody knows, they would be complaining about the exact same thing. So I just want to make sure that we're playing by the rules here, and everyone knows exactly what's going on. It is funny to see the Conservatives do it and annoy the heck out of the Liberals. Now, they don't have to. The rules say they don't have to. But the Conservatives would be just as annoyed as Khalid was if the Liberals showed up and did the same thing. And the Liberals would be just as valid in not distributing these documents.
no, Mr. Villemure says no. So can we collect the documents from the witnesses then, Mr. Barrett, and then?
If the
Sorry. You are? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, if the liberals don't want the RCMP to see the decision
I'm
tree,
so sorry, Chair.
then
I can't allow those kind of statements.
If the liberals,
I raised a point
if I
that
have the
is of
floor,
procedure
I have the floor,
in this
and I have the
meeting.
floor,
Yeah,
and I
so-
still have, if the liberals.
Holy crap.
Wow.
I have the floor, I have the floor, and I have the floor.
Man, okay, I know we're all kind of making fun of her, but I think as a woman in politics, you have to be probably a little bit extra strong than you normally would be just kind of walking around on the street, because you're in what's essentially and historically been a man's space, and men will just kind of like shout at each other, and it's not that they hate each other or anything. It's just like that's how it is, and they get stuff done. And to be a woman coming into that space, I think you do need to be a little bit stronger than you would normally.
You do, because if you're going to go into that space, then you put it this way, if all you've done all your life is you've played baseball, and then you decide I'm going to go and play hockey, but you bring your baseball bat and your baseball glove and you try to start to play hockey, everyone's going to look at you funny, and you're not going to cry discrimination because you're not trying to play by the same rules. And there's expectations that that you walk into here with. So you have to play by the rules. And there's certain ways that things are done here. And if you want to be in that space, you got to come to play. That's all you have to do.
Do not want the witnesses to have the documents, then I'll leave it to the chair to instruct the clerk to collect them, but I'd like to finish my questions.
Okay, so I'm going to instruct the clerk to collect the documents.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
respectfully, before you
Go ahead,
make
Mr. Green.
decisions
On the same
point of
I
order,
apologize. Go ahead.
respecting the standing orders, I'm duly accorded the time. I would suggest, so that we're not setting a dangerous precedent in terms of what expectations are, I would suggest that each of us have, through our own offices, the ability to do research, to do preparation for committee. And while it might be a courtesy that could be extended from time to time, I would just go on the record to state I surely would have no expectations of any party, both government, opposition side, to provide me with their homework in advance.
Wow. That's unexpected. The NDP just basically told the Liberals to sit down and shut up. That is very interesting.
Didn't see that coming.
Very, very interesting. Good on you, Matthew Green. Because again, it's exactly what I said. This is the rules. So you don't have to actually provide that document. Is it nice? Sure. But in some cases, you cannot. So it is what it is. So good on the NDP for actually standing up and saying, no, this is the rules. And this is the case. And he makes a really good point, because you have to allow NPs in their offices to be able to go off and do their independent research and bring things to bear in committee in order to proceed with an investigation. And he's right when he says it would set a dangerous precedent to not allow that to happen. It sure would, because it wouldn't just set a precedent for the Ethics Committee. It would set a precedent for all committees. And then that would limit MPs in many ways in their ability to actually conduct these investigations within committee, which, as we all know, this is where the actual work of the government takes place. So good on you, Mr. Green. I still have my opinion of your other antics, but you know, when you choose to actually be pretty based, you can be based.
Just state that. So, I'm a bit uncomfortable that we're going to start to put constraints on. And I'm saying this objectively because it could happen to any one of us down the line. If we've done the work and we've gone through ATIPs and done all the stuff, you know, as New Democrats, we don't necessarily have the resources to have big research policy bureaus, so we're doing it on our own with our incredible team behind me here. I just want to make sure that we're recognizing this would be a courtesy and not some kind of precedent in this committee where we're going to start having to share our homework, because I have no interest in that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Mr. Green. And I guess if we want to broaden that a little bit, the challenge runs with the risk is that, you know, there are other articles. This is an ATIP article, but there are Globe and Mail articles. There are CBC articles that people refer to all the time, but that are used in the line of questioning. So, Mr. Brock, I saw your hand up on the same point of order. Before I make a decision on where we're going to go, I think I've already made the decision, but go ahead, Mr. Brock.
Very quickly, what my friend Mr. Barrett was referencing comes out of the David Watts Manual of Jury Instructions. Any member can Google that manual and find that tree that Mr. Barrett is referring to.
So I'm going to ask the clerk, Mr. Duhaime. Mr. Barrett is going to reference to the document in question. I'm going to ask the clerk to collect the document, if that's okay. And then, Mr. Barrett, if you want to continue on your line of questioning, I think you'll give the commissioner and Mr. Pinsance a pretty good indication of what's on the document. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead. I've stopped your time. You've got 4 minutes.
Sorry, Chair. I don't need the witnesses to give their documents back. It's absolutely fine, but I did want to raise this as a point, because when we are giving documents to witnesses, we should be very mindful as to how those documents are circulated to the rest of the committee. In this instance, I'm fine.
Did you hear?
No, what was that?
They actually left Barrett's mic on. And he's leaning over and he said, "Holy Hannah."
At least he didn't swear.
Like, if you look at him, he's just exasperated. He has his fingers like digging into his temple, and he's just like, "Oh my goodness, somebody please kill me now." Hey, it's Barnaby's girlfriend.
If they can reference those documents at this time.
Okay, so I thought the original intent of your interjection was to not have those documents in the hands of the witnesses. So go ahead.
My original interjection, Chair, was that we can't see the documents that the witnesses and Mr. Barrett were referring to. Having listened to the comments of my colleagues, I'm okay with it this time, but I'm hoping that this does not become a common occurrence.
Okay, thank you.
It's not up to you. It's not in the rules. Shut up.
Keep the documents, Mr. Duhaime, Mr. Pinsance. Mr. Barrett is going to reference those documents.
Brassard's head's about to explode.
Yeah, he doesn't look too happy, does he?
Well, he's just like, this whole thing was you were angry that they actually had the documents in the first place. Oh, well, no, now I'm going to actually change my perspective here because, everyone exposed my filibuster as complete lacking in substance.
Mr. Barrett, 4 minutes and 17 seconds. I'm starting your clock now. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't need the approval of Liberal members for the material that I'm going to ask questions on. This one's very straightforward. It's a decision tree on Section 121(1)(c) of the Criminal Code, fraud on government. It's by the RCMP, and they've populated information on the document. It asks a series of questions with respect to Justin Trudeau's visit to the Aga Khan Island, Bells Cay. Was Mr. Trudeau a government official at the time? And it says yes. Did Mr. Trudeau accept a benefit from the Aga Khan? It says yes. Did the Aga Khan have dealings with the government? It says yes. Then it says, did Mr. Trudeau have consent in writing of the head of a branch of government for whom he worked? It says unknown. At that point, it says, if yes, then the final verdict would be not guilty. But it goes on, if no, did Mr. Trudeau know that he accepted was a benefit from a person who had dealings with the government? Yes. And then if yes, it says, final verdict, guilty of fraud on the government. Now, we know that, in fact, Mr. Trudeau did not have a writing from the head of branch of the government for whom he worked, because that question was put to him in the House of Commons. He was asked, in the House, it was asked, did the Prime Minister give himself permission to take that free holiday in 2016, to which Justin Trudeau replied, Mr. Speaker, no. He was asked again on April 26, 2022. Again, the answer was no. So Conservatives put the question to the Prime Minister to answer the only open question on whether or not the RCMP should lay a charge of fraud on government against Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in the case of his illegal vacation to Bell's Cay. Now, illegal it was certainly law-breaking in that it broke the Conflict of Interest Act. The question is, did it break Section 121(1)(c) of the Criminal Code? Commissioner, did the RCMP call Mr. Trudeau and ask him the question?
Wow, this is not expected. Holy moly. This almost feels like how they got Capone, right? So the whole thing about Capone is he was the biggest mobster in, what was it, New York or Chicago? I can't remember.
I want to say Chicago, but I could be wrong. You guys tell us.
There's so many famous mobsters.
Was Capone from New York or Chicago?
You know what? I can probably Google it in less time that it would take for Khalid to actually make another complaint. But anyway, it doesn't matter where he was. But anyway, everyone knew he was guilty of murder and money laundering and all that stuff. And they got him with tax evasion, right? They got him with tax evasion of all things.
Oh, everyone's saying Chicago, by the way.
Well, at least I got one of them right. It wasn't something crazy like Philadelphia. So that would be interesting if this is actually evidence being brought forward to the RCMP, so they turn around and say, oh, yeah, well, I guess we could investigate him and charge him for fraud on the government. Wouldn't that be crazy?
I would have to ask Mr. Pinsins, because I wasn't getting ready for the Aga Khan file, and I'm not as familiar with the Aga Khan file as we are with the Jody Wilson report.
Staff Sergeant?
Yes, so, Mr. Chair, so all I should have to point in relation to this specific decision tree is, of course, this is one part of a multiple pages document, so of course this is only an excised part of this. And now to answer the question as far as did we contact the Prime Minister in relation to this one? No.
Okay, so he wasn't asked, and it was left in the document as unknown. And the only open question on whether or not it met the standard of fraud on government. I want to refer to that same ATIP. And a Sergeant Arbor, who was the team lead for SII Team 3, said, quote, if further information of evidentiary value is to be received, SII will review and determine the appropriate course of action.
Go ahead, Mr. Sabera.
Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of MP Barrett's commentary right now, is this pertaining to the actual subject matter we're studying today or not? I'm just going to go to relevance.
I know you've been on this committee for a couple of times. 17 months I've been on this committee as chair, and in every circumstance I allow members to utilize their time in the manner in which they want to. And
Brassard is not taking anything right now. Just to give everybody a kind of a bit of an idea of what's going on, if you don't know. So what Barrett did is he or his office obtained an access to information request regarding the Aga Khan investigation. And so what he has in his hands is the actual documents from the RCMP regarding that investigation. And this decision tree that he has is basically helping him kind of indict the RCMP on why they didn't actually go and talk to Justin Trudeau about this, because he's saying that in that decision tree there is one point that needs to be completed that is marked as unknown. which is, you know, did he gain permission from an agency or like the ethics commissioner or something equivalent to actually go on this vacation? And it was marked as unknown. He's saying they have since asked Justin Trudeau in open parliament, and the answer was no. So the question is why is the RCMP not going and asking the Prime Minister that last remaining question that would essentially substantiate a possible charge of fraud on the government? And he's now going to be referring to other documents that he obtained as part of that access to information request. And the Liberals are getting very, very, very nervous about that. So this is why you're hearing this. And Brassard is just not having any of it. Khalid got him in the move, and now the rest of them have to deal with it. So have fun with that.
I expect that Mr. Barrett's going to bring it back, as I expect every other member will do the same thing. So, Mr. Barrett, I really, on the issue of relevance, I've dealt with this many, many times, okay? I don't want to hear another issue of relevance if we can. If we can avoid that to save time, I would appreciate that, okay?
Wow, I've actually never heard him talk about that before.
No.
And say, listen, I'm not addressing, you know, any point of orders to do with relevance, or maybe at that point that's when the zip ties and the duct tape comes out.
Mr. Barrett, go ahead, minute and 21 seconds.
Yeah, it's part of a pattern, Chair, from the Liberals, Ms. Khalid, Mr. Sorbera, to interrupt the line of questioning to try and cover up for the Prime Minister, and she's going to do it again right now. On the key question of if Justin Trudeau had consent to engage in the activity, the only question was if Prime Minister Justin Trudeau committed fraud on government. The RCMP didn't pick up the phone, but Conservatives asked him the question, we got the answer. And that answer is publicly available, and it was not protected like transcripts from a committee. So it could be used and has evidentiary value. Knowing that, and knowing based on that decision tree, wouldn't that affect the decision of the RCMP to lay a charge of fraud on government against the Prime Minister if all of the criteria set out in the decision tree from Watt's Manual of Criminal Jury Instruction were satisfied? Wouldn't that new evidence satisfy your investigation?
Oh, this is going to be a heavy question for them to answer. Holy. I don't envy being in their position right now, because that's going to be a tough one. My guess is, well, you know, we'd have to review it and we'd have to, you know, go back, and so they're probably going to say that. But this is amazing that this question is actually on record, everybody. Great job, Barrett, and great job, Barrett's team.
Again, Mr. Chair, I'm not in a position to say all the evidence that we had or we didn't have. It would warrant a follow-up on that file and come back to this committee explaining what we had on the file and the reasons why we didn't lay any charges. But I'm not in a position right now to say what evidence we had that came to the point that we didn't lay any charges.
Well, with due respect, Commissioner, the only outstanding question on the decision tree provided in the ATIP was whether or not the Prime Minister had consent. It was, the RCMP said it was unknown. We satisfied an answer to that question and that he did not. And based on this document, it says final verdict, guilty of fraud on government.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett.